First of all, Liam, congratulations. Bristol City are into the playoffs. Could you just talk about what an achievement that is? I mean, we've been building up to this for weeks and now it's a reality.
Yeah, fantastic achievement. A huge amount of credit, I think, to players, staff, fans, for everybody that played their part in doing it. And it's a collective. It was the collective that made it happen. So, it's obviously been quite a while. We're delighted that we've been able to do it.
And what did it mean to you on Saturday, being on the sun with you, being on the pitch with your son after the game, celebrating with the supporters? Have you had a second to be able to enjoy it, or at what point did you start to think about the first leg with Sheffield United on Thursday?
Yeah, it's a special moment, obviously a hugely special moment for me to be on there with Isaac. I had to talk him into doing it. He asked me in the week if he could do it, and I said yes, and then it came to it and he nearly bottled it. So got him to do it, and it's a special moment that will live with us, and I'm sure as he gets older it's something that we'll look back on and, obviously have a fantastic memory. To be totally honest, I was absolutely exhausted Saturday evening. I went back, had a Chinese and a couple of beers with Hoggy and his family and my family and relaxed a little bit and had a simple Sunday. And then getting the head on to Thursday night.
Because that's the thing, there's not much of a turnaround, is there? The game's on Thursday, so how have you prepared and managed the squad since Saturday?
Yeah, we're off Sunday, and then we were in yesterday, split group. So some lads needed some recovery, others needed some extra work out on the pitches, and then we all train today, train tomorrow, and then get ready to go.
And now City are in the playoffs. I'll take you back to something you said a couple of weeks ago. You don't want to just get into the playoffs, you want to now win and get into the Premier League. So how do you refocus the achievement of getting into the playoffs and now focusing on what potentially 3 games away from the Premier League?
Yeah, I don't think we change how we've approached everything. Everything's been game by game. And we know how difficult it is. We know how the level of opposition we're up against. We know we're the underdogs. When you look at the pressure, the expectation on some of the other teams that we're competing against. Naturally, there's a different level of expectation. When we spoke to about the lads to a certain extent, it's a terrific opportunity to go and continue doing what we've done all year, which is create a little bit of upset and surprise a few people and do it our way. I think that's the biggest bit. Whatever the outcome in the next 2 games, have no regrets, give absolutely everything. Which you see at the weekend at 2-0 down, the lads keep fighting, keep believing, keep pushing, and we're going to need to do that in the next 2.
How do you find that balance? You're right, there isn't as much pressure on Bristol City at the start of the season to get into the playoffs and win promotion as there was on other teams, but now you're here. How do you find that balance of, okay, the pressure's off, you're the underdogs, but you want to get through and win?
I think you take that from previous performances. I think when you look at the games we've had against the other sides in the playoffs, we've performed to a really high level. In other games, and it's about knowing us, knowing what we're capable of. There's always the external pressure, expectation, all that side of it. But I think if you're clear on what we're trying to do, if we're strong culturally, which we've shown, if we're aligned in how we play, if we're got an element of toughness to us, that will stand us in good stead in the games.
Is it too simplistic to say you've got a 25% chance of going up through the playoffs?
I haven't thought about it like that, to be totally honest. I just want to we got 180 minutes of football to try and get there. I think that's the biggest bit. Is all the work you've done throughout the previous months, all the grind, the marathon that we have to go through. It was hopefully a big relief and a release for the lads as well, because it was a new experience. The last two games of the season, having that pressure, something to play for. Some lads won't have experienced that before, so it's again another experience, more learning that we can use, and that'll help us, I think, in the next 2.
Is it slightly different in that it's over 2 legs?
Yeah, of course. I think home away. I think it is. I think in terms of how the first one looks and where you need to be after it. And I had a taste of the playoffs obviously a few years ago of MK, so I've had a little bit of experience. Obviously different, at this level, and slightly different. But playoff football is slightly different. So how we prep, how we prepare, and how you manage the game, I think, becomes equally important.
And what do you take from the 2 games against Sheffield United in the regular season, where you played well on both occasions and probably deserve more than just 1 point out of 6?
Yeah, we performed well, but I think when you look at them, just missed out on automatic. Chris done a fantastic job there this year. When you look at the squad they've got, what they added in January to an already stacked squad. They've got some hugely talented players. And we know how difficult it will be. But at the same point, we have to take confidence from the games we had against them. I thought, obviously, the most recent one up at their place, I thought we performed really, really well. I thought we were excellent. And like you said, slightly probably disappointed not to get more than a point.
In terms of players' fitness, I know some are playing through the pain barrier, but is everyone got through Saturday okay?
Yeah, everyone's come through Saturday okay. So yeah, it's one of those where got everybody through today. Is you're not chasing too much now. It's more just prep work, tactical work, clarity in what the game plan is, and keeping everybody in the best place possible.
Is there any news on Campering, and should you make progress, is he going to be available even potentially, or are we ruling him out at the moment?
No, there's a slight possibility. I think there's risk with all of it. So again, I think we have to make that decision, weigh up the risk. So we have to see how he responds, and whether that's possible or not.
I think you said to Ali on Saturday, I mean, you've had a lot of sleepless nights picking a team. Does Cam's absence provide a dilemma, because you've got so many different options, haven't you? Who can play on the wing back roles, who can play in the centre? How do you find that balance and try and get it right?
That's what I've been doing all season. I think it's again, I think how we've worked, most of the lads can play two positions. I think when we run such a small squad, it becomes quite important. So yeah, I think it's one of those hardest part of the job. Like I said, keeps me awake. I bounce ideas off some of the staff, but again, there's also that gut element and that feeling, which I think is important. So yeah, I'll be no doubt awake for the next few nights trying to pick a team.
And how special finally will Ashton Gate be on Thursday? A lot of fans enjoyed Saturday, but now they go again, and their backing's going to be very important.
Huge. It was a phenomenal experience on Saturday. Slightly concerned for you after the game when we couldn't find him, but it was fantastic. We actually showed a picture and some of the videos from it at the weekend, just the impact it can have on people, and like I keep saying, credit to the lads for earning that. I think in terms of ultimately through how we've performed and the results we've got. So we were delighted, we could do that, and you could see that, the volume of fans that stayed behind for for the laugh of appreciation they call it now. I think it was that bond growing, that excitement and that buzz, the connections growing all the time, and we're going to need that Thursdays and Monday. We're going to need a strong away support. We know how difficult it is to go up there, so turn up, enjoy it, get behind the lads.
All the very best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Obviously the result kind of slipped under the radar a bit on Saturday because everything that came with it. Looking back at the game, is there anything you noticed differently that you didn't notice first time around?
No. I haven't watched it. I'm going to be totally honest, I haven't watched it. It's one I haven't watched in terms of where I was at, absolutely exhausted after the weekend, and then also just getting ready for Thursday. It's actually one where for me I didn't feel there was going to be a huge amount I could use going forward, so very, very rarely, probably count on one hand, the number of times I've done it. I've not watched it and gone, right, let's get ready for Thursday.
Ross, we spoke about, it does feel like he's really finding his rhythm in a City shirt. It's the most longest run of games he's managed to put together. Is he at a point now where you think we're starting to see the best of him in a City top?
Yeah, for a good few months, I think when he picked up his previous injury, he was on a really good spot just before that. So you can't quantify the injury he had last year. So uncommon. I'd never heard of it when I joined the club. It was So the knock-on effect of his body and getting up to speed, the move, everything that comes with it. Naturally, I spoke around you transitioning. It'd be the same for Ross in terms of with an injury and what he's had to deal with. So he's been excellent, and I think he's one of those where he kind of epitomises again the culture that we've got of someone that leaves absolutely everything out there every game, and he's in a really good spot, and long may it continue.
To be doing that on the wrong side as it is, it shows even more about his character, I guess, that he's taken that challenge and not just embraced it but really thrived in it.
I actually think he's done better on the left than the right quite often, which is mad, but I think what it has, it shows, coming in on his right foot, finishes on the back post. Some of the other games he's had some decent chances from that area, and he just gets in there off just sheer endeavour and drive and willingness to try and win, which is a huge strength. I think especially in today's world, we jump to tactics and profile. Is psychologically how tough he is, how much he wants to win, his drive, his aggression. I think back to the West Brom game, him and Furlong, the duel they had for most of that game was. One moment this season that I thoroughly enjoyed. It was like a throwback of two just utmost respect, no one rolling around or trying to win free kicks, just two really tough competitors going at it. I really enjoyed, and he's got that about him. He's a real winner.
Is that something you see across the side? Because I think when you first came in, there was a lot of talk about tactics. You even mentioned it on Saturday, the 500 passes. You want to move forward. 1 to 11 now. Do you think you have players with that drive who are going to leave everything out there?
Yeah, I think credit to Nige as well. I spoke with him as well. Inherited a group of great lads. I'm quite clear what we walked into. We inherited a terrific group of people and pros, and we've added to it and progressed it and moved it forward. But again, the starting point I think was a group of lads that were willing to work and willing to learn. Which is obviously music to our ears as coaches, that we can come in and put our stamp on it and work the way we want. And when you look at it, I think it got thrown at me a few times last year, the lads, more than anything, that there was City maybe is associated with an element of softness, which we've worked hard to try and nail that out. I think when you look at it, that willingness to run, to compete, to dig in, to keep scrapping, because that can get you points, which is really important. It's not all around the nice attacking stuff, the combination play, the chances. You want to be successful in 46 games. You've got to on a bad day be able to grind and fight and get something out of games on those days as well.
That sort of, not softness, but the change had a reflection at home in particular, where it's the most points the club's picked up since they returned to the division at home. Is that as simple as just putting your stamp on the game a bit more? What do you think are the factors behind that uptick in form at home?
If I could put my finger on it, I'd use it again and again in the future, to be totally honest. I think it's one of those, we spoke about it at the start of the season in terms of making it a really difficult place to come. And again, I think we tried to make it quite clear in how we do that. And again, I think if you look at the performance levels, we've been quite consistent with what the games have looked like and how we've performed. And some of that will come with just being familiar to the settings, the pitch, the atmosphere, the energy in the place. I think you become used to it, and you're able to then hit a level of consistency with your performance. When we haven't done well enough on the road this season. We're quite clear with that. Can't change everything overnight and crack everything. But I think when you look at it, you go away and pitches. The quality of them, I thought at times, a few places were really poor this year. The size of the pitches, the atmosphere is different. There's so many factors that go into it that do feel different. So we really enjoyed playing at home. I'm delighted we've been able to give the fans something to look forward to at a home game to turn up and get behind, and long may it continue.
I wanted to ask about Anis, because it's such a good season for him, but peaks and troughs, I think it's fair to say. He came on and looked really at it on Saturday, really direct and lively. How do you find that we've spoken a lot about finding that consistency with him? Do you think it's getting there, starting to get there?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's had a terrific season. If you look at his performances and his numbers last season to this season, he's massively progressed. And he's still got more room for growth as well. He's someone I love working with. He's driven, he's hungry, he's desperate to learn and improve. He's in love with the game, which I think is something that often gets overlooked as well. He's so passionate about it. And you can be tough with him. And of course, there's elements where he gets frustrated with me, but you want that. You want people that are not happy to not play. I think, as long as they control it in the right way and they put the team ahead of themselves, which I spoke about at the weekend, I'm okay with people being annoyed at not playing. It's then, when you do get the opportunity, what do you do with it? The only way you give me a headache is by delivering. And Anis at the weekend I thought was excellent and really changed the game for us. So I know in the next two games is going to be hugely important.
And considering the size of the squad, which you've spoken about a lot, that attacking midfield area is a place where you've got some really big decisions to make, don't you? With Scott, George, Anis, you can play there. It's real good competition for places. Yeah,
no, it definitely is. We have an in-game changes again. I think we've been much better this season at that. It's when me and Huggy spoke around trying to be a bit bolder and braver with the changes that we make. And I think sometimes, especially, it gets overlooked a lot, the volume of changes that now get made in games versus 5-6 years ago when it was less. The game can become a bit bitty, not necessarily just because of the number of moments, but when you're changing potentially 10 players in a half, for them players to get up to speed and find rhythm, and that takes time. So we consciously said, let's be a little bit bolder and make 3 or 4 at once and give them time to settle into the game and get up to speed. And and it's probably helped us a little bit that this year.
Just finally for me, obviously it's quite a quick turnaround between the two games. I know you say you pick a team to win every game, but how will you have to have one eye on Monday a bit with the quick turnaround? No. Cheers, Liam.
22 points between the sides. After 46 games. Based on the 2 matches you've had with Sheffield United, do you feel you're a bit closer to them than that?
Yeah, knowing the points, because the points are the points, so that's how far we are away. I think it's for me, are we capable? Of course we are. I think that's the biggest bit, and that's what you have to take in terms of from the games, irrespective of the points from the ones that we've had, and that's where the lads I think have really progressed in that. The reflection's not always on the result, the reflection's on the performance, because if you consistently deliver high-level performances, you'll get the results. And that's kind of what we've gone after a little bit this season. So I think when you look at the games we obviously had against them, the performance level was really good, but the results, probably weren't what we wanted or, what we maybe deserved. So you have to take all that. It's history. You have to take the confidence forward from it and the belief from it. But ultimately, Thursday's a completely different game and a different challenge.
You've mentioned the away results. Do you think that puts a bit more pressure on Thursday's game to have some sort of advantage to take there?
Not necessarily, no. I think it's one of those, people look at stats and they're there to be broken and changed as well, right? I think last year to this year is the perfect example. So for me, I'm not worried about the away games. I don't. What worries me is the behaviours, the basics, the game plan, where the lads are at mentally going into the game and relishing it. I think that's the big bit. It's been so long. Let's look forward to it. Let's enjoy it. Let's not be fearful of anything. Let's go and have a right go and leave it all out there.
I think for fans it was emotionally draining on Saturday. I'm sure it was for you guys as well. How are your sort of emotional levels now recovering for a game again so quickly?
Yeah, I was shot to bits on Saturday. I'm not going to lie, I was all over the place. I think in our interview, right, nearly burst into tears at the end of it. I think it's been. I'm not going to go into it again in terms of the year I've had, because it's much more about the club and the team. But yeah, I think when you look at it for everybody associated, I think you could almost feel the big release from a lot of people around the place just to have a bit of success. I think that whether like I said, we haven't achieved anything yet, but there's an element where finishing top six in itself, when it's not been done for so long, is an achievement. So, of course, we should be proud of that. But at the same point, everybody spoken a lot about it. The group's driven and ambitious. I'm driven and ambitious, and we don't want to just take part in the playoffs. We want to compete and try and progress.
I mean, people say it's genuinely you're starting from scratch now. Is anyone favourite, or is it genuinely anyone's to take now?
We'll stay as the underdogs. I think we're right at that. It's one that player football's so different. I think everyone then talks around form and momentum, and that all has to go out the window. I think it does become that. Of course, you do choose what you carry forward from the past, but they are so different. For me, I think four teams that are just going to have a right go. I think.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Liam, one thing I didn't ask you on Saturday afterwards was, can you shed some light on what the dressing room was like? So you've had the moment on the pitch where you realise you're in the playoffs, the euphoria of that. Then the fans run on the pitch. You is then safely returned as well into the dressing room.
In a state of shock as well.
In a state of shock, I can imagine.
I did ask him if it had happened in Japan, to which he was like, no, never. So he was shocked, yes.
What's then said, and what is that feeling like when it's just you and your team again?
Do you know what, it was, as always, I let Nighty speaks first. So Nighty addressed the team first at the weekend, and typical Nighty in terms of a few pats on the back, but then let's go and follow it up on Thursday, which probably my fault in terms of spoiling the moment for the lads a little bit, and that I've got ingrained that it's next one because of what the nature of it is. But it was one of those. We spoke around the fans outside, and you could see how much it meant, and of course, when you achieve something that we did at the weekend, you have to reflect on the positives in the journey you've had, and everybody playing their part. Even before the game, the pre-team meeting, all staff and all players were in there, fit and injured, because they're going to do. It is such a collective effort. It isn't just on the lads that started on Saturday. When you look at the number of appearances for everybody in the squad, they'd be quite high, just because we do have a small group. When you look at the work that goes on behind the scenes here, the kitchen staff are phenomenal. There's so much care and detail goes into planning the thingies, like the meals, the recovery meals, because it's so important. Izzy with the planning, Sheridan in the corner there in terms of the work with the media, the relationship with the external, the fans, etc. It's such a huge operation. What happened on Saturday is a result and an accumulation of many people's efforts, not just the lads. Our job's to allow the lads to step on the pitch on a Saturday and perform. And like I said, for me, to everybody that's played their part, thank you.
And you mentioned it was emotionally draining for yourself. It was emotionally draining for the supporters in the stadium as well. At any point during a game like that, do you enjoy it? Or is it just stressful the whole time?
Do I enjoy it? It's tough to do that. I probably don't. I think you're so focused in the game that you're not really aware of it. And Huggy's great, to be fair. He's straight said to the staff on Monday, especially we've got some young staff that are relatively new to first team football, and we wanted to make sure we reiterated to enjoy it, because it doesn't happen every year in first team football. When you look at the stability that we've had, the consistency we've had, the results, the group that they get to work with are first class. That doesn't happen at every club. So it's very much that. We told everybody to enjoy it. I enjoyed a beer on Saturday night. I did enjoy a beer. And then, it's tough, because naturally you then go, right, what's next? And I'm terrible for that. The season will finish and it'll be, right, what's next? And it's very hard, I think, probably slightly different for players to staff, or even myself, I think, to be able to, players rightly so, probably enjoy it a little bit more than what we do, because it's, right, what do the players need on Monday? What session are we delivering? Who needs what? And you naturally tend to bounce into what's next. But definitely enjoyed it walking around the pitch with my son. Definitely enjoyed seeing how happy the fans were, and I'm delighted for the lads to to get everything that they should.
Best of luck Thursday.